Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating phenomenon that, let's be honest, almost all of us have experienced firsthand. We're talking about the journey into, and hopefully out of, burnout. It's this sneaky trap that so many ambitious, hardworking people fall into without even realizing it's happening. In This Explainer, we're going to follow our little stickman protagonist's journey as we look closely at the science and the psychology behind why pushing yourself to the absolute limit often achieves the exact opposite of what you intended. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. Have you ever finished a grueling, incredibly long day of work, finally sat down on the couch to just relax, and then immediately felt this heavy wave of guilt for doing absolutely nothing? Like you tell yourself you should be learning a new skill or checking emails or planning out tomorrow. You know the feeling, right? For millions of people, simply resting has become deeply, deeply uncomfortable. The very second they stop working, this anxiety of falling behind just completely takes over. It's this constant, heavy fear that everyone else is moving forward while you're just stuck standing still. And honestly, a lot of this stems directly from the always-on culture we live in today. We literally carry smartphones that are constantly pinging with updates, and we're surrounded by a hustle culture that insists every single waking second of our lives should be monetized, optimized, or productive. And because of that looming shadow of productivity, so many of us end up just like our exhausted little stickman guy here, working incredibly late into the night. We sit there, staring blankly at brightly lit screens at midnight, completely surrounded by a messy desk of empty coffee cups and crumpled papers. Because when we feel like we aren't doing enough, our instinct is to just work longer. We push harder. We hustle more. We willingly sacrifice vital sleep just to check, a few more emails, finish just one more task, or get a so-called head start on the next day. We totally convince ourselves that this late-night grind is the ultimate proof of our dedication. Which brings us to part one, the illusion of progress. So, we live in a modern culture that treats productivity almost like a religion. Every single minute of your day must be optimized. Every task must be tracked. Every second must be useful. We've been conditioned to believe that if you're not in constant motion, well, you're failing. But what if that core belief is entirely wrong? Think about how most of us work today in our chaotic digital workspaces. We're frantically answering emails while checking direct messages, listening to a podcast while simultaneously scrolling through social media, switching browser tabs every 2 minutes, and just jumping wildly from task to task without ever fully focusing on one single thing. It feels incredibly fast and productive, right? But the reality is, your brain pays a heavy, heavy price every time it switches attention. It leaves a little bit of its processing power behind on the previous task. And the more fragmented your focus becomes, the harder it is to think clearly. And this brilliantly illustrates the core problem. We are constantly confusing movement, which is really just activity disguised as achievement, with actual progress, where meaningful work is getting done. You can be incredibly busy all day long, navigating this endless series of digital interruptions, replying to dozens of micromessages, and yet somehow get very little meaningful work accomplished. That's exactly why so many people feel completely exhausted at the end of the day, despite having almost nothing tangible to show for all that frantic effort. It's like they spent 8 hours sprinting on a treadmill. They burned a ton of energy, sure, but they never actually traveled anywhere.
And that leads us right into part two, the productivity paradox.
This constant crushing pressure to stay productive creates a vicious, inescapable cycle. Here's exactly how it goes. The more overwhelmed you feel by your tasks, the harder you try to push yourself. But the harder you push, ignoring your basic needs, the more deeply exhausted you become. And naturally, the more exhausted you become, the less effective your work gets. So the crucial point is this. The harder you hustle, the slower your brain actually becomes. It's wild, right? The very thing you believe is helping you succeed and get ahead is secretly destroying your focus and slowing you down. Your brain simply was never designed for nonstop 24-hour productivity. Have you ever noticed that after hours of grinding, your thoughts just become fuzzy? Maybe really simple decisions, like figuring out what to eat for dinner, suddenly feel incredibly difficult to make. You find yourself reading the same sentence, reading the same sentence like 3 times in a row and still not absorbing it. Or you walk into a room and completely forget what you were about to do. It is essentially like a computer with 100 browser tabs open. The cooling fan is spinning incredibly loudly, the engine is running super hot, but the screen is just completely frozen. I want to reassure you right now, that mental fog, it isn't laziness. Those are the absolute earliest warning signs of burnout. It's your brain's warning light flashing on the dashboard, practically screaming that your cognitive system is dangerously overloaded.
Okay, so how do we fix this? Let's pivot to part 3, building systems, not hustle.
The answer to escaping this exhausting hamster wheel isn't to just dig deep and find more motivation. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between motivation and systems. Think about it. Motivation comes and goes. Some days you wake up with plenty of it, some days you have absolutely none. It's highly unreliable. Highly successful people, they don't rely on motivation to get things done. Instead, they build reliable systems. A system is incredible because it entirely removes the exhausting process of decision-making from your day. You aren't relying on willpower anymore, you're relying on a predetermined structure. You see, real discipline isn't about forcing yourself to suffer or working until midnight with heavy eyes. Not at all. It's about creating simple structures that make good decisions automatic. Let's walk through this. Step 1. Exercise at the exact same time every day. When it's a fixed part of your schedule, you don't even have to debate whether you feel like doing it, which saves you immense mental energy. Step 2. Schedule specific focused work sessions rather than just sitting around waiting for random inspiration to strike. And step 3. Create an environment that deliberately protects your attention. Look, if you put your phone in another room, you literally don't need the willpower to resist checking it. The environment does the heavy lifting for you. But you also need to actively reset your focus to heal from all that cognitive overload. Step 1 here is absolutely crucial. Deliberately spend less time mindlessly scrolling. Just cut it down. Step 2, turn off all those non-essential digital notifications that constantly fight for a piece of your attention throughout the day. Seriously, turn them off. And step 3, which is honestly often the hardest part, take actual breaks without immediately reaching for your phone. It can feel incredibly uncomfortable at first to just sit alone with your thoughts for 5 minutes without looking at a screen. But lean into that discomfort. By reducing unnecessary stimulation and simply allowing your brain to experience silence again, your attention eventually recovers. Your thoughts clear up, your energy returns, and surprisingly, the work actually becomes far easier to tackle. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Part 4, sustainable recovery. This right here is the most important shift in our entire explainer. It is time to completely sever that toxic association between your self-worth as a human being and your level of busyness. I really want you to absorb this. Rest is not laziness. Recovery is not weakness. And taking care of your mind is absolutely not wasting time. In fact, it might be the most productive thing you can possibly do. Your true value is not measured by how many tasks you cross off a to-do list, how quickly you respond to an email, or how late you stay up staring at a glowing screen. Let's move to and see how this builds. Ultimately, your brain is not a machine built for endless 24-hour output. You cannot just plug it into the wall and expect it to run at maximum capacity indefinitely. It is a living, breathing system. And like every living system in the natural world, it performs at its absolute best only when it is given the time and space to sustainably recover. Think of it like agriculture. Farmers know they have to let a field lie fallow for a season so the soil can replenish its nutrients. If they plant crops constantly, the soil literally dies. The people who achieve long-term success know exactly when to push forward and exactly when to step back and let their minds replenish. So the next time you feel that familiar pang of guilt for just resting on the couch, stop. Stop chasing the endless hustle. Protect your energy. Build better systems instead of relying on the sheer force of your own will. Because I want to leave you with this one provocative question to think about today. What if the absolute fastest way to move forward is actually to slow down? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take some time to truly rest today, and I'll see you next time.